Hello. I see that most of people are on lunch. Okay, so my name is Maciej Treder. This is my handle. I have a lag, so you can find me under the same handle on all of those social networks where I am present. I'm from Krakow in Poland. It's in Software Poland. On my daily basis, I'm working in Akamai Technologies. A part of that, I'm an Angular passionate. I am working with Angular on my after hours. I am also contributing in open source and writing articles about Angular, JavaScript, and network technologies like microservices, JWT, and so on and so on. What Akamai is, the company which I am working for, is a content delivery network with headquarters in United States. In Krakow, we have really big office, one of the biggest one outside of United States. And Akamai is serving approximately from 15 to 30% of the internet traffic, the whole internet traffic. So what I'm going to speak today, it's not about Akamai, it's not about network, it's about Angular schematics, so about development and developing for other developers. Most of our time we are developing for the non-technical persons, and sometimes we need to develop for other developers, and this is what schematics are about. So the outline for today will be the quick story how I met schematics, how I get familiar with that, with those. Later on, the small case studies, which in my opinion are interesting. There will be 2 case studies for schematics. Then I will show you what is the solution for problems which we can meet in case studies, or maybe not the problems, but the challenges. And finally, we will go to how to report bugs in the schematics and how to test them, because it's sometimes a little bit tricky. All of the parts I'm going to indicate with the small ribbon at the bottom with the colors, so if you will fall asleep or for any other reason get lost, it should be easy to find out where we are within the talk. Okay, so first things first. The story. So the story is about the idea, and I had an idea about creating yet another great application which should give me $1 billion, so I shouldn't work anymore in my life. Everything what I would do would be a fun. It doesn't matter what the application was about. What is most important is that I was looking for solutions which were not yet available on the market. So I want to create a web application which would be modern one, which will give the user a smooth experience like a native application. So I decided to go on with Angular because it would be a web application. I want to make it SEO friendly. Because the application was about managing goods in warehouse, I want to make it working offline. So and of course the most important thing, how to get a lot of money, you need to save a lot of money as well. So I want to deploy on cheap environment. That was 2 years ago or a little bit more. So the serverless environment was just walking into the market. It wasn't very popular. I decided to create the PWA, and that was during the time when CLI, Angular CLI, was not really popular, and most of the people were using the boilerplates with Webpack. So to do not reinvent the wheel, to do not create everything from scratch, we were using Webpacks. I found a couple of those. One was the universal starter, which were giving me the SEO part. Another one was the Angular with Webpack, which was great for development. I didn't find anything for PWA and serverless, so I created yet another one. So people could clone it and start working with it on their end. That boilerplate was PWA, of course. It was prepared to be deployed on Lambda from Amazon. I decided to share it on GitHub. It get quite popular. And then I started to share the link to this boilerplate because I was curious what people thinks about that and etc. And I found out one post by this guy who I strongly recommend to follow. And he asked me about the schematics, why I didn't use schematics. And that was the point in my life when I first heard this term, and I started to a little bit Googling around. I found out that schematics are a CLI plugins that could be used for extending the existing Angular applications. So I starting to ask myself a question: is Git really designed for storing the solutions for others? Because what are the problems with the boilerplates and what the problems we had previously? The problem which I met personally, in fact. So what if you have an existing application or you are using for just one piece of the project? With boilerplate, you can only clone it and rewrite it on your own. You are just basing on something, and that's all what you can do. It's not an easy thing to work with boilerplate. And this is where schematics comes to the action. And we are smoothly moving to the case study. The first case study, this is the Sasha, and he wants to use a particular library. The traditional way for him to do that is first to read the documentation. What is that library written for? How you can manage it, etc. He falls in love with that library, so he downloads it from npm using the npm install. Then going to the code, make some changes, adjusting his project. Of course, he's running into problems. Then, if you are running into problem, you need again go to the documentation, and here the circle is coming. You are fixing the bugs, then new appears, documentation, bugs, documentation, fixing, and so on and so on and so on. This is the first use case for schematics. The another use case is, let's imagine that this is Dasha, and she is working for a big enterprise. They produce one product or couple of products or lineup of products. So the Dasha is producing one of those. She is a front-end developer. The lineup of products it's a set of microservices. Let's say this is the software as a service. So there are other teams. They are producing their own microservices, and here the problem comes. Let's think that all of those microservices are producing their own front-end small application, which is a small part of the bigger lineup. This is the front-end liked by Dasha, this is the front-end liked by Sasha, and this is the front-end which is produced by Bob. All of those inputs have the exactly same role in the application, that are collecting data and storing it somewhere, but all of them looks completely different. What big enterprises want to do, and what, for example, AWS does, what Akamai does, we want to give our user the exactly same experience across all of our products. So often there are guys who sitting in front of those. In Akamai we call them front-end engineering team, and they are just giving others the guidelines how you should write your front-end to give your user a smooth experience, because others are going to use the same buttons, the same combo boxes, inputs, the same information, information indicators which you have, for example, here, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so let's get back to the first use case. how to use the library. I want to consume the library. I am the library, or let me put it this way. I am the library developer, and I want to give my users, my end users, other developers, a smooth experience with my library. So they don't need to dig into the documentation, run into issues, at least while they are trying to onboard with my library. And this is what you are doing every day when you are working with Angular and you are typing the ng add, ng update, ng generate, or ng something. What ng add does, it first of all install the dependency from Node.js, or let me put it this way. What ng add does, it calls the Angular CLI, which calls the Node.js to install dependency from npm. Then Angular CLI calls the Node.js again. It looking for schematics and apply the changes to file system. That this part is that what schematics are going to do on behalf of the library consumer. Where ng-CLI is looking up for schematics? Inside the package.json, we have a field which is called schematics, just one additional field in the JSON. And in this field, we need to point the collection.json file. This file combines together information about all CLI commands which you take under consideration with your library as a library developer. So for example, we have an ng add here. Inside every object which represents the command, the particular CLI command, we need to give information at least about one thing, which is a factory. What factory is, it's a file which represents the function which will be run by Node.js. So this is the function where you are factually writing the code which Angular CLI going to execute. Another thing which is nice to have in the collection.json to every ng something command is schema. Schema is representing the options which your user, the library consumer can use with your schematics. So for example, when you are using the generate command with service and you are typing ng generate service, my service name, then that name is declared in the schema.json file. Which example we can see here. So for ng toolkit, the project which I found, and ng toolkit/universal, that was one of the parts which I was looking for my 1 billion app. There is in schema the option, one of the options which is described is the if I want to install the HTTP cache module or I don't want to utilize it within the Angular application. So I no longer ask ask inside the documentation and explain if you want to use that, you need to add, you need to slightly change the module configuration. I'm going to just collect this data from the user. I will ask him for adding the -- option something, or I can prompt him with the question and just ask if you want that or not. And then I will collect all of that informations and I can use it with the options parameter which I have inside my schematics. That schematics, just to recognize, is that first field from the collection.json, which is a pointer to the file where we store the factual schematics. So now I can decide if you are my user decided to have something, do that. If not, do that. As you can see, This function, this is written in TypeScript and later on compiled to JavaScript. This function returns the type rule. What is the rule? Rule is a basic thing which is consumed by the Angular CLI, and to give it a quick overview is just 3 in, 3 out. What 3 object is, we are going to go a little bit deeper just in a second. For now, let's keep in mind that 3 is representing the file system which CLI met before applying schematics. So onto 3 I can call some functions to create files, then CLI is consuming that. So if I will call 3 create hello and then word, I will create the file called hello with the content world inside. What more you can do with 3 object is, for example, listing the directories. You can visit each directory and perform some action in it, and so on and so on and so on. Here you can find an example of the get dir, let's say. And so what we are doing here, we are getting the working directory of the project, go inside the environments. We are visiting each of the file. If it's ending with TS, we are adding the additional property to the project, which is here described by line to be inserted. What's great about rule is that rules are chainable. So I can take together couple rules, I can write them in the separate files, or I can use external rules from other schematics, from other developers. Let's say I just want to enhance the existing schematics. So I can take that rule, external rule from that schematics, chain it with my own, and that works this way, that 3 object which represents the file system will be just passed from one rule to the another. Of course, once the rule will finish successfully. If any of that rule would fail, then the 3 object won't be passed over, the whole schematics will fail. This is what we're calling the commit approach. So we are still with that guy, that he wants to use the library. How you can enhance your existing library with schematics. So of course you need to create something, some data structure. So you need to have the schematics folder. Inside of that you should add the ng-add folder, place the collection.json inside. Of course this catalog structure is just proposed by me. You can create it whatever you like on your end. What is important is that you need to prepare the separate TS config for your schematics, because you are going to compile 2 different things. The one thing is your library, the another thing is schematics for CLI. You could think about that as 2 projects within one. Another thing is to add of course, to add the schematics information pointing to the collection.json inside the package.json, which is going to be published on NPM, and finally compile all of that together and publish it together to the Node Package Manager repository. Those are the files which are additional. On the example of ng-toolkit/universal, there is also one more thing which has not been listed on previous slide, and that thing is the files catalog, which you can see here. We are going to cover that really quickly. Just to remind, this is, or not to remind, just to see, this is the package.json of that particular project, together with scripts which I am using on my end. So a part of the build, if you will take a look at the build script, a part of building the package itself, I'm running the TypeScript configuration for schematics, that the second thing here, And later on, I am copying files to place the compiled schematics together with the package and to publish that all together. This is the collection.json for the universal, just for reminder. And finally, the schema which we are using. One again, just to remind you that we have the directory property and HTTP. Those are just going to be used in the schematics.ts file. So to let you know where those comes from, you seen the schema.json. So I have the schematics.ts. The first thing which I'm going to do here is to import some helper functions and objects from the Angular dev kit schematics, of course rule, chain, because I'm going to create a bunch of rules. So I am creating the array which will represent those, and at the end I will return the whole chain. And now comes the files which I promised you that we will describe. So what I have here in the files is the code which I want to have in my customer repository, but I don't want to keep it, it's large, and I don't want to keep it directly in schematics. So to avoid situation when I am using something like tree create, let's say static.js, and put the 10 lines as a second parameter, I can create that file and use the technique called template source, and just using the helper functions from the Angular dev kit, I can copy this to my user project. Using different merge strategies, I can override files. So if the file static.js already exists in your project, these schematics would override them. Of course, there are also different strategies like omit the duplication, and so on and so on and so on. The next thing, that is one of rules which I'm pushing to the array. Another one is creating just some random thing or more generic, basing on the options. On our end, we are just calling the create hello world, which is creating the hello world TS file with some console log inside. So that's about ng-add. What is ng-update? It's another thing which you would use as a library developer. ng-update is a command used for updating. So let's say that I introduced some bug in one version of my library. I got a report, I'm going to fix it, and you as a consumer need to make some changes after applying new version of the library. So again, I don't want you to go into documentation, so I am writing a special small set of schematics, which is just an information what need to be changed from one version to another version of this particular library. And Angular gets an information about that again from package.json, where we are pointing to the migrations collection, inside which we are saying that my factory for updating from version 6 to 6.2 is here, etc., etc., etc. What I strongly recommend again about using ng-add and ng-update is just to use them together. So when you are writing your initial schematics, that would be the first and one of the last touch for your factory for ng-add. All of the others, and this is why I strongly like the chain method, all of the other changes, all of the code fixes would be just chaining existing rule with the rules which are representing particular updates. Thanks to that, the code is much more maintainable and etc. What to watch for with schematics? What could be the pitfall? Working with source code, this is the super highly difficult thing. And I'm happy that Microsoft changed their politics somewhere in the past, and they start to be more open sources, and thanks to that they are giving TypeScript some call that compiler as a service. In other terms, you can just download, install in your project the whole TypeScript library and make changes on it and just behave like a compiler. Thanks to that, it's easier to work with source code. Let's imagine this simple task that my library, my module is introducing the service, which is a wrapper for the window object, and I want to change all of the occurrences of window object reference to this window. And of course, I'm going to inject this, this service in the component. A solution could be super simple, or the naive approach is super simple. So I am going to my file, I'm getting the content of it, I am putting it under the code variable on which I am just applying the regex, which should change all of the window occurrences. What is the problem with that? The problem is that it could, the window or any other particular sentence can occur in different contexts. So I can have it inside the string, I can have it inside in the middle of the name, in the comment, etc., etc. And if we would apply that schematics, changing the string it's not nice, but it's not so bad. But what we have later on is exactly destroying the code. So the project which we're compiling stop to compile anymore. And this is where we can use the TypeScript as a service or compiler as a service or just TypeScript. Import everything from the TypeScript, and later on, whenever I got my content, I got my, those 3 lines are much similar to what you've seen before. So I am taking the content of my file, I am within the tree object, I am beginning the transaction that I will be making some changes on this particular file. I am loading the file content to the variable, so it will be there as a string. And here I'm using the TypeScript to create an object which will be representation of that source code. And within that object, I can navigate or iterate within each child which is inside of it. And what child is, for example, import statement, it's variable declaration, class declaration, method declaration, etc., etc., etc. And on each node inside the file, I am checking, is this class declaration? Yes, it is. So I am going inside and I'm looking in this particular case for constructor. If I am inside the constructor, perfect, I can insert something here. I can add the console log here. So on the example with the window, what we would do, we would just check if this is a variable representation. I don't remember what is the particular name of the method which checks for the variable literal. Finally, when I am done with all of my changes, I am updating them, I'm committing them to the tree object and returning this tree object, and returning that tree object at the end of my function. Yeah, what would be for the variable? Do we have, yes, is variable declaration. If it is a variable, no, in this case, declaration would be let window something. We would be looking for probably is variable literal or something like that. But there are tons and tons of those Boolean methods which are checking if this particular part of code is something. At the beginning, I told you that rule is taking tree as a parameter and returning a tree. So this is that one tree parameter is the necessary one. There is also a parameter which is not necessary, which is optional, and this parameter is the context, which is the variable which represents the. I am understanding that as actual Node.js environment on which I can call some actions, like execute scripts or install new maybe not install new dependency, but execute the npm commands like npm install. So with the tree, I can adjust the package.json, and then calling on the context, I can call the command which will install the dependency which I just added to package.json. So let's move smoothly to the second use case, which is I think that would be more often used by most developers. So following the guidelines, and for this purpose, the Angular team created yet another CLI. Why I'm showing this CLI right now is just because I didn't find out the easy way to use this CLI with existing library. It's really complicated, and even the official guide is saying that start from scratch and create the files by your hand. But for the blank schematics, which when you want to enhance the existing ng commands, it's really great to use this one. So by running the creation of the blank CLI, I got the basic catalog structure, and inside of that I can start to work on my extension. Let's say that we want to add some, or your manager asks you to add the credentials information to every component file within the project. So we have the license text at the top. We are going to again use the chain, and let's say we run the schematics which apply that for the existing files, but we want to have an enhancement to the ng generate command, so every new component will have that line. So we are taking the external schematics from the schematics Angular. This is the library which is used by default by the CLI. What is important here, take a notice that we are using that as a string, so compiler won't complain on you if you won't install that, but this is necessary to make your schematics running, so keep that in mind. The second thing which are passing to our chain is our schematic. We are going to the directory which is created by this particular schematics. So this is under the options name we have this word which is passed under ng generate component options name. We are visiting this path, and if file ends with .ts, we are getting the content. If there is no content, we are returning, and if there is a content, we are checking if some other schematics didn't apply that yet, because maybe they did, and if didn't, we are just adding this license text at the very beginning of the line. Later on, we have the collection.json, where we need to point out what comment we want to enhance. On our particular case, it wouldn't be my component but the generate. But it could be also my component if you would like to somehow differentiate from the component, because we are going to use those schematics in a slightly different way than the traditional one from the Angular team. Because we are going to use them this way. And generate my component colon, and here then we are calling the method from the collection.json, which is my component, and passing the hello world component name. This comment has been run in the project after using the npm link inside it, so it behaves like the schematics which were written in the separate project has been already installed in our patient. What schematics, and this smoothly moves us to reporting. What about problems? What if schematics won't work? How to get information about the errors which occurs? Because schematics are not only returning the tree. What the rule can return is observable of tree, another rule, or void. And here we are going to make a use of the observable, because thanks to that it returns the observable, we can create the helper function which will apply some side effects basing on that if rule is passed or not. So first, in my helper function, I am going to take as a parameter the rule. I am using the bug snag. What the bug snag is a great project for reporting bugs from production, from JavaScript or Java, etc. You would get the email notification about new bug together with the stack trace. So I am going to use it with schematics. I am in it registering with my project key on the very top. And now I'm going to return the new rule. So I'm creating the anonymous function with the tree and context parameters. Inside this function, I am calling the rule which I took as a parameter. So I am calling this guy here, and I'm calling it here by using the tree and context from my anonymous function. And because because rule can return observable, I can pipe to it and catch an error if it occurs. And if that error would be catched, I am going to place the bug snag report and just tell my user that first of all, I'm going to tell the user that I have the stack trace of this. I know that there is a problem. I send it to the tracking system, and within the schematics, I am just applying nothing. So I am returning the tree empty and completing the observable. So that will print to the output information, stack trace sent to tracking system, nothing changed. Thanks to that, I am able to see reports, how often people are running into issues, what are the issues they are running into, so I see what they run at, and for example, bootstrap node found in the app module.ts. Some regex failed. Finally, testing, and this I'm going to go super quick because we are running out of time. What's tricky here? What's tricky with unit tests? Or maybe not tricky. How to run them smoothly? First of all, use the schematic runner from the Angular dev kit. Thanks to that, you are able to run whatever schematic you want before the test or during the test, etc. What I strongly recommend is to create the unit test tree, which will represent the empty file system, on which before each we are going, you can, or in this particular case, I'm doing that. I'm applying the ng new command. So I have the fresh new file system with the basic Angular project in it. And later on, within each test case, I am just using the schematics runner to apply this particular command which I am testing. So this is about the unit test. What about end-to-end? What I strongly advise you to use is the Verdaccio. This is a npm package, which is I would say the npm proxy on your localhost system. So to do not publish things to the real npm, there are a couple of reasons to do not do that. Maybe someone would install it in the meantime and install the buggy version. The second thing, sometimes it's, or maybe not sometimes, after 1 hour, it's super hard to get things unpublished. You need to write an email with request to unpublish thing. And more of that, it's shame to publish tons of the versions within 1 hour. I am the person who is continuously squashing commits because I don't want to show my colleagues that something was continuously changed on my own. I want to have everything in one commit and show that how smart I am. In fact, I am just squashing. So same with Verdaccio. Here I can publish and publish and publish and publish, and if my solution is already polished and I am satisfied with that, I can go to the real NPM and show to the others that I can introduce huge changes in just one minor version. So in my particular project, how I'm using Verdaccio, I just have prepared, I'm just going into schematics, running the publish, then I'm going outside to some other project which I created. This is the content of the bash script. So I'm going outside, ng-add my schematics, and later on you can use whatever you would like to check if the content of the file is as you expect, or for example for Angular Universal, I can run the build, run the project, and curl on it and check if in the curl response I got the fully rendered view or not, and so on and so on and so on. Still, my handle is same. My name is still Maciej Treder. Thank you all for your attention and for your time. And the feedback QR code if someone would like to leave it.
Thank you, thank you.